Hi, my name is Jerry Spinak. I'm in Montreal. Moved from Edmonton to Winnipeg, back to Edmonton, now Montreal. I'm retired about 8 years, and I worked in social services for most of my life, non-profits. And I went to Talmatora for I went to JPPS, to Paris. I went to Paris for 7 years at night, and started about 1953-54. And my fond memories, it's all social, it's all jumbled all together.
My name is Tony Schwartz Barenhout, and my fondest memory was growing up on Aberdeen Street, a block and a half from the old Parrot Show, which I went to. And at 3 years of age, one fall morning, I followed all the other kids on the street to the school. My mother, like 9 months pregnant with my sister at that time, was racing around looking for me. People directed her back to the school. She ran in, and Haverzolf says she wants to stay, let her stay, as long as she does the work. So I started grade 1 when I was 3 years old, and stayed until my mother got pregnant again and we had to move, and the school moved, and there was no way she could get me to the new school on Aikens. So that's when I started going to what they called middle school, or afternoons only. And since then I've had a varied career. I lectured at the University of Manitoba for a couple of years in introductory sociology, and then of course needing something better to do because academia is not my thing, I wound up as an accountant.
My name is Roberta Ferdman Cantor. I went to Parrot School, and I think my fondest memories were of Cantor Brownstone and the fact that he was in charge of the choir, and he allowed me to be in the choir, but I couldn't sing, and that was my favorite memory of him. And I'm a retired special ed resource teacher. Had a fabulous career, loved what I did, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk to everybody at the reunion.
I'm Nelson Rudelier, originally from Winnipeg. I live in Vancouver now since 1964. I'm retired, been married 4 times, and I'm much happier now that I'm single.
My name is Sandra Rosen. My maiden name was Cogan. I was married to the late Bill Rosen for 37 years, and I went to Talmatora from about 1949 to 1957, graduated in grade 7. My favorite teacher, though, was my grade 6 teacher, Mrs. Tamara Wiseman. After high school, I worked in a bank until I got married, and that's about it. I'm Judy Tennanthouse Mahone. I went to Parrot School to the end of grade 9. Day school and evening school. Fond memories still with many friends. I'm still in connection with lots of them. Remember everybody's names, and I've got pictures with me from grade 4, grade 6, and grade 7. What do I do after that? I became a lab technologist, married him somewhere in there, and worked with him for a lot of years.
And does him have a name?
Him has a name. His name is Bill.
But when I went to school, I was always Billy. If somebody calls me Bill, I know when they met me. If somebody calls me Mr. Mahone, it's the RCMP or Revenue Canada. They're the only ones who call me Mr. Mahone.
My name's Arlene Walsh, and I have maintained my name, even though I was married for 21 years, and I have a wonderful family, and now I'm blessed with grandchildren. I do live in Toronto, but I was raised and born in Winnipeg, and I went to Tomatora. And memories of Tomatora are Rabbi Kravitz, because my Zeta was very close with them, and then later my Zeta founded the Ashkenazi Shul, and after Rabbi Kravitz retired, Rabbi Whitty came to the city, and then eventually he ended up in Toronto, so I was fortunate enough to have him marry me.
Okay, my name's Ruben Kantarovich. I went to Parrott School from 1959 till 66 or 7, something like that. Favorite fond memories. Well, these are faded memories. I remember having just fun playing recess, rain or shine, snow or not. It was once I graduated from Parrott School, I went to St. John's. Then I wound up working in the engineering department for CP Rail for 30 years. I'm retired now, and I don't know what more there is to tell.
My name is Jaime Rosenblatt. I'm a cousin of Zave Combs. I'm very pleased that he organized this reunion for us. I went to Tomatora from 1950 to 1957, and then I went to Tomatora Night School for about 6 years. I also sang in Mr. Brownstone's choir. I was a teacher for 38 years, and now for the last 12 years I've been retired.
Ze'ev Cohen, but people usually call me Zev nowadays, and in the old days they all called me Zevi. When I was going to Talmud Torah and Herzliya and then Joseph Walensky Collegiate, all of this in the 50s and early 60s, up until 1963. And unfortunately, I'm one of the organizers of this great event, this marvelous event. I just read a Facebook posting from July 13th, 2016, where I say to my good friend Avrum Rosner, why don't we have a reunion? And my goodness, we're here at the reunion. I wish everybody a marvelous time. I thank Ken for his good work, and we go on from here.
Hi, my name's Avram Rosner. I started Talmud Torah in 1952 in nursery school when they opened that new building on Matheson, and graduated from grade 11 in 1964. One thing led to another and life went on, and ended up moving with my wife Marnie to Montreal in 1984, and we've lived in Quebec ever since. I retired from my day job a few years ago, as Marnie did. She closed her medical practice in Montreal. We moved to what used to be our summer place in the Laurentians. And I like to tell people in Quebec that it's the same distance from Montreal as Winnipeg Beach is from Winnipeg. Not too many people understand what we're talking about, but we're fine with that.
We're happy to be here.
Who is everybody?
Who is everybody?
Yeah.
I'm David Perloff.
Okay.
Chip Stoffman.
Sheldon Colvin.
Jack Miller. Oh, I thought you didn't remember.
Elaine Mellor-Chagres. And we're Tomatora people.
Yeah, no, I'm Parrot School.
We're Tomatora. And we're JWC
Yeah,
people.
I'm Parrot School, Tomatora, and Joseph Willis. None of them would keep him.
Just to be clear.
What happened here?
Well, I'm Beanie Cohen. My maiden name is Sarah, and I'm just so excited to be here. It has been about 50 years since I have seen everybody. And Tomatora and the Jewish Winnipeg community, I mean, that's where it really all began for me, and I think probably for all of us. Our roots, our values, our identity, and I've had a really exciting, very exciting life. I'm a psychotherapist and a sex therapist, and I'm an expert guest on national radio and television in the United States. I live in Manhattan, and it's interesting. I host an Ask Beanie radio show on the Progressive Radio Network, and for the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about the reunion. I've been talking about coming back to Winnipeg, and I'm so grateful for everything that the Winnipeg Jewish community has given me. I'm an only child. There's nobody left here, and I am just very excited to be here.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first leg of what I believe will be a most memorable weekend. The lovely lady standing beside me is one who I met when I was only 4 years old. We were both in nursery school together at Fresh Peanut. This is Eileen Margulis Curtis, and we will be serving as your co-hosts this evening.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On behalf of the Reunion Committee,
You need the microphone close to you.
thank you.
Hold on to it.
Thank you, Zeb. I'll start again. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
On behalf of the Reunion Committee, I am pleased to welcome you all to the Winnipeg Jewish Schools 1950-1960 reunion. It is so wonderful to see all of you here this evening. Who would have thought that a Facebook posting of a 1960 grade 7 graduating class photo would have generated such excitement? Excitement that resulted in the creation of a website that took off in a manner we never ever expected. It soon became apparent that while technology was a method of connecting, it was not enough. It became about a need to reconnect on a more personal level, a need to see friends from many years ago. And when Zev Cohn suggested the idea of reunion, we enthusiastically responded with a resounding yes. While there have been many who have been influenced over the years in our lives. Some of the best people we have ever known were the kids that we grew up with and went through school with. In some fashion, we helped to shape one another. We were influenced by one another. This weekend is intended to be a celebration of us and the friendships that began so many years ago. Friendships that have endured or friendships that have been recently rekindled. It's about those friendships and how they have impacted our lives and how they will always be cherished. We all have our personal reasons for making the effort to be here, and each has certain expectations for the weekend. Avram, Bert, Zev, Elaine, and myself hope that everyone who is here for this reunion will remember this experience for the rest of their lives. We are proud to be able to arrange this weekend for you, and we are delighted that you have been able to arrange your schedule to be here for this occasion. It is your presence that will ensure the success of this reunion. And now I am pleased to introduce my co-host this evening, Bert Schaefer.
Thank you. You know, I'm really astounded, but definitely gratified to see how many of you have come from all over the US and Canada, and even some from Israel, to be here with us. So many faces that I haven't seen for decades, if not longer. Working to help organize this reunion, however, has not been without snags and stress, and my wife will certainly testify to the fact that I don't react well to stress. Even my dog suffered from it because I didn't have time to play with him, to walk him, etc., etc. But he figured out how to get back at us. One day I dropped a letter on the floor, and using the excuse that we all did at least once in our school time, the dog ate it. He got to the check that I got in the mail and destroyed it. So, like I said, he got it. Anyways, I just wanted to welcome you all here and indicate that among you is at least one person who is in the first graduating class of Talmud Torah, and I believe 1951. And then there is another person who started no good for nothing. Get it right. And there's another one who was in the first class in 1951 and ended up being in the first grade 6 graduating class following that. Anyways, I want to welcome you all.
I was in the first grade 12 graduating class.
No, you weren't. Avram Rosner, Avram Rosner, no, he wasn't.
I was.
Your own Foreman was in.
We marked you down for a star.
The first graduating class was in 1965. Grade 12, yes.
It was a combined class.
I'm not going to debate it with you. We were there.
Okay.
You don't. Anyways, I just want to get the dinner underway, and we'll begin with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. So if Henny Paritsky could come forward, please.
שקט בבקשה. Because she puts the mic down and up, and I put the mic down. Because I don't want you to hear too much of my voice. Since I was asked as a young child, and then joined the choir, since I was asked to mouth the words. Since then I have been very careful.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
We have greetings that I wanted to read to you from the Prime Minister's office, from the Premier, from the Prime Minister, excuse me, from the Premier and from the Mayor. So if you'll just give me your attention, from the Prime Minister first, dear friends, I am pleased to extend my warmest greetings to everyone attending the reunion of the Winnipeg Jewish School students of the 1950s and 60s. For many decades, Jewish schools in Winnipeg have offered an education that emphasizes academic achievement, personal responsibility, and cultural celebration. This reunion offers alumni a wonderful chance to reconnect with former classmates and to share treasured memories, and I hope you're doing that. As you look back on the years spent at Jewish schools in Winnipeg, you may reflect on the many experiences that have shaped your lives while celebrating the valued contributions of the Jewish community that the Jewish community has made and continues to make to our nation. Please accept my best wishes for a memorable reunion. Sincerely, the Right Honorable Justice P.J. Trudeau.
Justin is his name.
Justin. Now I have a message from the Premier
of Manitoba.
On behalf of all Manitobans, I am pleased to congratulate and welcome those attending the reunion of students of Winnipeg Jewish schools of the 1950s and 60s. Over many decades, the Jewish schools provided an excellent learning environment for many young students. Thanks to that strong foundation, many alumni of those schools have gone on to be productive careers in science, medicine, law, public service, and numerous other professions and vocations. I thank the many parents, teachers, and administrators who have contributed to this success of Winnipeg's Jewish schools over the years, and those who continue to do so. I also convey my appreciation to the many volunteers who have worked so hard to make this celebration a reality. I join all Manitobans in conveying my best wishes for an enjoyable, memorable weekend of activities. Signed, Brian Pallister, the Honorable Premier of Manitoba. Finally, the message from the Mayor. It is my pleasure to extend greetings to those of you attending the Better Late Than Never Winnipeg Jewish Schools reunion. For those of you who are coming home to Manitoba from across Canada, the US, and Israel, please let me wish you a warm Winnipeg welcome. I understand that your weekend will include music, tours, dancing, and debate. I imagine that those attending the reunion will reflect the tremendous diversity of Jewish life and opinion in Winnipeg, and the conversation will be lively. And of course, like any reunion, one of the greatest aspects of the weekend will be the chance to meet old friends, swap some great stories, catch up and relive your lives, experiences as classmates have after a half-century apart. On behalf of the City of Winnipeg and my City Council colleagues, I would like to recognize the work of the organizers and volunteers who have made the reunion possible. The history and contributions of the Jewish community to our city is one of Winnipeg's greatest sources of pride. And we are proud to welcome you all home for a wonderful celebration. Warmly, Mayor Brian Bowman, City of Winnipeg.
Lasst uns
My name is Avram Rosner. I'm really happy to be here. 1952, I started nursery school at Talmud Torah, the year that Talmud Torah opened on Matheson and Powers. In 1964, they finally let me leave. I finished grade 11 at Joseph Walensky, and it was an important time in my life, as it was, as your particular instantiation was in your lives, and I'm so happy to see people here that I haven't seen in a lifetime. I'm not going to go any further in that direction. We should meet together in groups and individuals, as we've been doing for 24 to 48 hours, and please take advantage of this opportunity. Who knows how many people will be here for our next scheduled reunion, which is in 2018. So, right, Zeb? Yes. So thank you so much for coming. Let me quickly outline this morning's program. It's pretty much as you see on the sheet. We're going to have two talks, two talks about Jewish media and the history of the Jewish community, and I'll introduce the speaker shortly. After that, we're going to have a rotating panel. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but if it works, we'll repeat it at the next reunion. After that, we're going to have performances by the Yona Choir, which is a children's choir of 9 to 12-year-olds, connected with Chai. I'm not sure of all the new connections. I'm an old school person. And following which, we're going to have a klezmer spectacular by two former members of Finjan, which is one of my favorite groups in the world. And thank you, Ruben Kantarovich, for introducing me to Finjan. And that, I think, will be the program for this morning, after which you can stay and chat all you like.
Ask any questions you want up to 6 p.m.
Up to 6 p.m. you can, then you can go to the mic and ask more questions. I just want to take one moment for a special purpose. And that is, there are so many people here who are happy to be here and who we're happy to see. But there are too many people who are not here. And I didn't think I'd be anyway, they would have loved to be here, and we would have loved to see them here, but that's not the way that life worked out. We're talking about teachers, but we're also sadly talking about sisters, brothers, close friends, relatives of all kinds, neighbors, and there are unfortunately too many to list. We thought of doing it, but then we thought we're going to miss someone. So let's talk about them and think about them on their own, and let us be inspired and blessed by their memory. And let's take just a moment to think about that. I don't want anyone to stand up. I don't think that's our tradition. Let's just take a brief moment to think about that, and then we can continue. Last year, we were able to reconnect with a wonderful teacher, Joseph Walensky, that many of us remember. Family was here for a brief period of time, and I'm talking about Phyllis Schneerson, was the widow of Rabbi Philip Schneerson, and it was a very enthusiastic and wonderful reconnection. I had no idea, even though she wrote us an email early in the year saying, "Watch out, I just might show up." Those were the approximate words. And little did I know that she and her daughter, Rena Lee, who was born in Winnipeg during the Schneersons' brief stay in the city. Rabbi Schneerson was the rabbi of the Rosh Hashanah, late 50s and early to mid 60s. Little did I know that they were secretly plotting to actually come to this reunion, because they never told me. Until I received a call from Rena Lee about 3 weeks ago saying that her mother had passed away on September 7th. And I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. And then she said, "I'm coming." And she's here today. And thank you, and our sympathies, our condolences, and we have wonderful memories. Thank you for being here, Rena Lee. Okay, next order of business is we are going to talk about the Jews in Winnipeg from different points of view. Huh?
Why not?
Well, okay, I know. I would like to introduce our first guest speaker. His name is Professor Daniel Stone. Professor Stone is a Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Winnipeg, specialized, I think, in Jewish history and in Eastern European history in particular. And I would like to, and he was for many years as well, president of the Jewish Heritage Center. And so I would like to give him the floor to speak to us for a few minutes about the development of the Jewish community in Winnipeg. Professor Stone.
The microphone.
You want to use yeah, sure.
When I started at the University of Winnipeg in 1969, the classes went for 50 minutes, and I usually ran overtime. After a while, they switched to 75-minute classes, and I still ran overtime. Now I do some now that I'm retired, I do some non-credit teaching. But the classes go for 2 hours, so I'm glad we have the room booked till 6.
The doors are also locked from the outside.
Anyway, you ask a professor, you get something that's more or less academic, and here we are. So probably the first Jew who came to Winnipeg is Ferdinand Jacobs, who was the chief factor up in Fort Prince of Wales, Churchill, in the middle to late 18th century, 1700s. There's no real confirmation that he was Jewish. There are a couple of Rabbi Cheel in his wonderful books said that he was Jewish, and there are a couple of letters by people who were people up in that region who called him a Jew. Needless to say, the Hudson Bay Company either didn't know about it or didn't publicize it, and he conducted Anglican church services, which was his professional obligation as the chief factor or the CEO of Churchill, Manitoba. But he probably was. Post-war changes. Well, this is what you're involved in, and I'll try to keep this short. I've probably gone on too long as it is. You can see the population trend. It begins to fall 1971. The percentage of Jews in the Winnipeg population falls dramatically, in part. A lot of it has to do with suburbanization. I think that it hadn't been studied demographically, but there, 1981 you have city merger, amalgamation, and that changes the base on which you study it, but there wasn't all that much suburbanization until after World War II. But it was still a very viable community, and you have these new institutions that you're familiar with. The move south is tremendously important. As you can see, stampede in the 1950s, and a continued erosion until it was now about 25-30% in the north. The institutions moved north a little bit towards Garden City, and then south, as we know. Some of the communities that developed, first in Garden City and further north, which still is there, and south that you're familiar with. Social changes, a lot of people left the city. Some people came in. I'm running on, so I won't continue too long on this, but you can see big change, of course, is the general acceptance in the community, integration. The sign of that is many of these cultural leaders and political leaders who came out of the Jewish community, something that would not have happened several decades earlier. The garment trade is not time to go into. It flourished and then outsourced, because it looked as if it was fading out, but hasn't. And then just to finish, just a sort of not really a chart, but some ideas of what it used to be like, what it has been like since. And here we are.
I am thrilled to present the Yonah Choir.
Please, thank you. It's not
choir, you never cease to amaze me.
Alisa, Shani, Vanessa, Claudia, Clara, Jean, Sophie, Ilona, Dana, Michelle, Leah, Tali, Sophie, Liron, Noah.
Let's hear it for the boy.
Thank you so much, Gary and ladies.
At this point in time, I would like to, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, who is and if I get it wrong, he'll correct me. He does a lot of that in his profession, who is the publisher and the editor of the Jewish Post and News. And in doing so, he's upholding a tradition that goes back many decades, and which to this day I can't believe that the tiny, isolated Jewish community of Winnipeg in the middle of the prairies managed to create, sustain, and feel the need for and make sure it carried on until this day. It's a precious contribution, and it's one that doesn't exist in many larger centers, I can tell you that. So I would like to welcome to speak about Jewish media in Winnipeg, Bernie Bellin. Bernie wants to walk around.
I want to have some fun with this. Instead, it sounds like a dry subject. Okay, we're swallowing away. First of all, for my own curiosity, I want to know how many people are here from out of town. Can you show of hands? Looks like about half, right? And there are 220 people here who are not registered as of yesterday. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I want to, you know what, more than myself talking, and I can do it. I want to, and I know we're kind of short for time, and especially if Myron Schultz is on, because he'll go all day. But I want to get other people involved in this, because it's just, let's not make it a one-way street. And I'd like to start by doing something that I think you can all recall, which is Noah Whitman's radio program. Right? I mean, who doesn't remember being in their mom and Zetas or in their parents' house listening to Noah? Right? Eric, okay, let's have a show. How many of you remember Noah Whitman's radio program? How did you know he also had a TV show, though? Yeah, I was one of them. I remember when on the TV show, Noah used to get up and dance. He also used to get up and dance on his radio show. I don't know if you knew that. You couldn't see him dancing. But Noah wrote for the Jewish Post until shortly before he died. And Noah also had his own newspaper. So just to give you a little bit of the history, and I had to do my own research on this, Jewish newspapers in Winnipeg go back to 1911, where the first Yiddish paper was called Der Yid. It lasted, but not too long. And then there were actually various attempts at Jewish newspapers, but the one that's been most successful, I'm glad to say, has been the Jewish Post, which merged with the Western Jewish News in 1987. The Jewish Post was started in 1925 by a guy named Ben Cohen, who's probably, to my mind, his greatest achievement was hiring Mel Fenson as an editor. I think a lot of us remember Mel, right? And I had the fortune of knowing Mel, and actually I thought that Naomi Fenson, who was one of his daughters, was Cubs, right? Okay, I haven't seen Naomi. I did visit Mel Fenson before he died in Israel. He lived on French Hill. And there was a gathering of ex-Winnipeggers there, which I filmed and was on Noah Whitman's program. haven't got it anymore. I wonder if there's an archive of that. It was fabulous. There were about 40 ex-Winnipeggers. But Mel was an erudite editor who left a strong tradition to follow. He was editor from 52 to 59. Then he went to Israel. Then he came back to Winnipeg for a while. So the Jewish Post, it's interesting. I have yearbooks in my house going back to the 1960s. And then the Jewish Heritage Center has all of them from 1925 on, and add all the Western Jewish News yearbooks until 1987. But our archive, for those of you who don't know, is fully available online. That's the Jewish Post archive. So if anyone wants to do some searching of their family history or of their friends, just go to the Search Archives button on our website, and you'll find a treasure trove of information. I've been doing it from time to time, actually quite often, and it's fabulous reading. And I have to say, the most recent one I did was on Monty Hall. It'll be coming out in the next issue. And for those of us who had the fortune, I didn't meet Monty in person. I saw him quite a few times. But we all feel, when you were at a function that Monty Hall was presiding over, you felt like you were standing right next to him. He was so English. And he told, what I did is I went back into the archive, and you could search. So I want to see when's the earliest reference to Monty Hall. It was 1941 when he was Monty Halprin, of course. And in those days, and it's interesting, I'm going to quote from something, not from that, but people were referred to by their initials. Unfortunately, Winnipeg is more famous for the people who have left us than the people who have remained or the people who have since departed this earth. So it's sad to say that a large part of Jewish newspapers in Winnipeg are dealing with the past, which is not unusual for a newspaper in period. But I remember reading a book about Jewish newspapers in Canada, and they referred to this quaint Winnipeg tradition of posting the pictures of dead people and yard sites, which fills up a good chunk of our paper. But apparently, you can't say quite unique because that's grammatically incorrect. We're not unique, but we're quite unique in that respect. and what's interesting is, since I know a lot of you by name, because I've been in touch with people when they're either putting an obituary in or a yard site, or they contact me to find out something about their relatives or something or another, and I refer them to the website to find the information. But I'm curious to hear from people here what their own experience was. I grew up in a family that had 3 Jewish newspapers. We had the Jewish Post. I don't know if we had the Western Jewish News. I always thought it was a rag. With all due respect to the Barton family, that owned it for a long time. Actually, just to tell you a little anecdote, Jewish Post was started in 1925. 3 months later, the Western Jewish News was started. I didn't know there was such a treasure trove of advertising potential, but if you look at the old newspapers of those eras, they'd be small papers, and then the holiday issues would be 150 pages long. Boring. You can't imagine anything more boring, these turgid, long articles that would stretch over 50 pages, full of ads for the garment business and, was it Roco Radio? What was the gas station on Main? Roco? Roco. Remember, Roco was a big radio oil. That was a big advertiser. It's fun looking at them, but in terms of journalistic integrity, they had that. Although the editorials, there was a Hyman Sokolov who was editor of the Jewish Post for a long time, and I was reading this article, apparently he was highly respected, but no one could read that stuff. I mean, I can imagine our grandparents coming over from the old country, reading this very literate English, with run-on sentences, and I thought, you know what, the papers were there, but the one that came along was their Yiddish Report, which, I've got the dates here, it started, stopped, started again, and then it was originally all in Yiddish, then it became half Yiddish, half English. I didn't realize until reading this that the other half, the Israelite Press, was their Yiddish Report. Did you know that? Yeah. I didn't know that. I thought the Israelite Press was a separate paper. Anyway, so at a time in the 60s especially, which I think was the heyday of the Jewish community, that was interesting. Did you see? We almost hit 20,000 in 1960, and then the exodus to Toronto, Vancouver, the States. It began en masse, and now, so then there were the two Jewish newspapers. The circulation was fairly good, but it turns out that a lot of it was being papered. There were, people were getting the paper, they weren't paying. They weren't being cut off. So when we took over the Western Jewish News, and we wanted to see how many, the Jewish post circulation at that time was only about 1,700. And we took over the Western Jewish News, and they had a circulation of only 700. And when we culled, we saw that 500 of those were taking both papers. So which means the vast, as in any community, the higher proportion of people do not take newspapers. In Winnipeg, actually, what's interesting, Cecil Rosner is here, who's head of CBC News. Is it head of CBC News, isn't it, Cecil? Or is it? Yeah. Cecil worked for the Free Press, and then now he's head of CBC News, and actually, we were talking about newspapers and about switching to online media. And CBC has a fabulous website. We have a website, but websites, as almost every Jewish newspaper that I've talked to, compete with your own newspaper. So that's a struggle. Here, I'll just read you. Okay, this is from, and I think it was a Niddickman who wrote this. This was sent to me long ago. It was a chapter about, I don't know the year. Oh, this is 1925. Okay. Miss Marion Corman, Wardlaw Avenue, who has spent the past 10 days in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has returned home. There's a better known Mr. Alan Bronfman, who spent the past 10 days in the city, left Sunday for Montreal. Weddings, births, bar mitzvahs, and obituaries. Weekly bridge club meetings were reported, as were concerts and birthday parties, including surprise parties, all found their way into Miss Zoe Isaac's social column. And that was a good chunk of the paper. And of course, the paper reflected the covers for the holiday issues are these dramatic pictures of Moses from Mount Sinai, or the heroic labor, the labor leaders. There was a strong socialist bent to those papers, even though I think the owners were all pretty staunch capitalists. And I invite you to look at the archives online. It's a trip. And I know that for instance, when we reported on Jerry Maslowski, who passed last year, I have videos of Jerry Maslowski going back years that I took. I was fortunate enough to be able to record his videos, so those are all there. But the stories we had of Jerry Maslowski going back to the late 60s, I can't remember the name of his group. What was his name? Special Blend.
But he was also the advertisement.
Yeah, he was. Gail Cantor was my partner when she was Gail Frankel, and you took over from Jerry, didn't you?
Yeah.
We had an argument about that with someone. They said, oh, Sophie, you said Jerry was there in the 70s, but he was there until 1982. Those are the kinds of things I love to do, and as much, it'd be nice to ask people for their reaction, but I know we're hard pressed for time, so I'll cut it off there and just say thanks, and this is a great pleasure meeting you all too.
I think this is so unique, and this is a guy who really doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Bernie, I don't think you have formal training in journalism.
No, I'm a pseudo-journalist.
So he doesn't come from the traditional kind of journalism school background or whatever, but nonetheless, I've got to say, Bernie is one of the top journalists in the city. He's extremely skilled in investigative journalism, and Winnipeg is very lucky to have him.
Please, go ahead.
My name's Abby Goldstein. I went to Parent School. There's one important function that the Jewish newspapers had around 1910, 1920, and then when people from Europe wanted to immigrate here, they put ads in the paper and found sponsors to get here. And that's how my family got here.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Robbie Schwartzwald, and I live in Montreal now, but I had the pleasure of working in the archive of the Historical Society a few years ago for an article about A.M. Klein, a Canadian poet and editor and essayist. So the article that Bernie refers to about the unique practice of Jews in Winnipeg putting photos in the paper for yard sites, there was an article written by A.M. Klein. That's actually, and it's in his style. It's very funny, but also very kind at the same time. One thing that struck me when my topic was A.M. Klein in Western Canada. I've been asked to write about this for a conference about Klein, and he made several tours here. And one thing that struck me about the Jewish papers at the time, especially the Jewish Post, was the liveliness of the debates. So yeah, on the one hand, there were those long articles, many coming off syndicated services that filled especially the holiday issues. But there were real discussions and debates in the paper. And the reference we had earlier, for example, to Bijan, it's hard for us to understand this today, but there were real debates in the Jewish Post in the 1930s about whether this was a viable option. And there were even things like the Baron Hirsch Society and the Montefiore Society were involved in donating money to this cause. And of course, after the Second World War, and with the founding of Israel, it was A.M. Klein again who wrote an article that was published in the Jewish Post that more or less was the obituary for that alternative. But one thing that struck me were all the kind of social notes that Bernie mentioned, but also these real debates that testified to the liveliness of the community and of the paper's role in actually furthering that. Just one other thing I want to say very quickly. I had to do some research about a photograph for a book that I was doing, and there's a wonderful photograph of my father with Pierre Trudeau. At some kind of my father with Pierre Trudeau at an event in Winnipeg, and with several very elegantly dressed women with beehives and long dresses, and we couldn't quite figure out if it was for a Jewish event or a Liberal Party event, and what year it was. And the archivist, whose name I now forget, I'm very sorry, helped us.
Stan Carboni?
Pardon me?
Stan Carboni?
Maybe, yes. The way we figured it out is he looked at the length of Trudeau's sideburns. And he said, in this year, Trudeau had sideburns down to here. And in another year, only up, so it helped us narrow it down. So, good work at the archive.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rennie. Oh, sorry, Avita.
That's okay, I'll go.
Okay, I'm Rennie Rubenfeld. I go by Bill Lauer. I have two things I want to say about the Jewish Post. First of all, I appreciate every year. My parents have both passed away. My mom, 10 years ago, her birthday would have been today. Next month it'll be 10 years she's gone. My dad, 17 years. Every year I get a call from the Jewish Post on both yard sites, put in the yard sites every year, and that reminds me to, to think about our parents. And a lot of people make comments, oh, we saw your, parents' yard site in the Jewish Post. So I appreciate that phone call when it comes up every year. The other thing is, my dad's...
Did you pay your bill yet?
I always pay on time. Yes. Yeah. The other thing I want to say is that my father's parents, Moshe and Frida Rubenfeld, my
Baba Frida passed away many years ago in the 70s, and I was a teenager then, and I don't have that many memories of her, but one very strong memory of her is she was a very learned woman. She spoke like 7 languages, and she loved to read, and she went blind. And I remember sitting in their living room on Polson Avenue, and one of the activities that we did together, my parents had me read to her from the newspaper because she always read the paper until she went blind. So I read the Jewish Post to her. I read from the English newspapers. I think I read a little bit in Yiddish from, learning it from Noah Whitman, my limited Yiddish, but that's one of the fondest memories. I always, when I think of her, I remember reading the papers to her. So, thank you for that.
I just wanted to correct what I think is a sort of omission. I don't think it was intentional, but when we had the history of the Jewish community in Winnipeg, and we were hearing this wonderful lecture and seeing it all on there, I think we left something out that I picked up on quite a few years ago. If you all remember, I had a bookstore, a Jewish bookstore. I think People's Bookstore with Miller. We have to remember that was on Jarvis and then my bookstore was for 9 years, and then Winnipeg just, I think we were moving towards the computers, etc.
Whitman had a bookstore too. Whitman had a bookstore in 1992.
Whitman had an underground bookstore.
Jason had a bookstore.
By the way, Jerome is my mother. Jerome is my brother, Jerome Bowman. And our mother worked with Noah for 25 years running the Yiddish Award.
Thank you. Come ahead, come forward. I just wanted to say that for that omission, we're firing Dan Stone officially.
We just didn't give enough time.
Hi, I'm Rita Lee, share some I'm Rena Lee Schneerson, Flug. From Los Angeles. This is just amazing, but that's not why I wanted to.
We've heard of it.
Just to comment on Monty Hall and how things come full circle. Monty Hall was a longtime resident of Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, and a longtime member of my school in Los Angeles, Temple Beth Am. And he was very involved and very active and always ready to be in one of the productions or the galas or be philanthropic. And he and the previous rabbi, Rabbi Jacob Pressman, looked alike and often impersonated each other. And it was always been a love affair. So I always felt it was very special to me, having been born in Winnipeg, that there was this very active, prominent person, Monty Hall, in our midst. So just wanted to let you know it all comes back to Winnipeg.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sheldon Hicks. I'm a defense lawyer in Winnipeg. And so I don't want you to be afraid I'm going to speak for a long time. I'll only do that when I get paid by the minimum court. So I'll try to keep my remarks brief. But I must say to you, I was taken by the number of people here, particularly those from out of town. It's an amazing turnout. And it's a credit, I think, to all of us who went to those schools, because that becomes historically such an important part of our upbringing and our development and what we are today. The thing that struck me, and I just have to share this with you, is I don't know how many of you are obviously parents and grandparents, but I've noticed over the past number of years, regrettably, is the disconnect between the younger generation and the kind of history that we bring to this school tonight, this afternoon rather. So to me that's sad that they didn't get the benefit of what we got, the motivation that we got. I can still lead the services of the Shara Zedek. I can still read Torah. These are things that I've learned and taught, and I still retain. And so trying to drag your children to synagogue for the high holidays now seems to be a chore. So what I say here today is what a credit to all of you who took that education, who are probably trying to raise your children, hopefully with some of that heritage and history, and hopefully someday you'll grow up and smell the roses and see how important it is to be a Jew, to celebrate that by going to synagogue, meeting with friends, particularly in a weekend such as this.
Anyone else? Go ahead. By the way, I want to limit this to the question of Jewish media, because after the appearance of our friends, we're going to have an opportunity to have everybody say what's on their minds. So if you hang around for a little while after that, we'll do that.
Hi, Michael Lazar. I'm freshman in a day school, Joseph Winsky Collegiate. And at one point, one of the guest columnists at the Jewish Post for a while, in the young adult scene, and I think I covered the Winnipeg Jewish Men's Forum. But what I wanted to say that I find remarkable, and always have, about the Jewish Post in particular, and the other papers, is how they really promoted, while giving news, of course, promoted interests of all sorts that reached out to all sectors of the community. I happened to do the young adult scene, obviously, many, many years ago. There's a Russian language section, a Yiddish language section. I think you can also have Spanish now. We used to have Spanish when the Argentinians started coming. And of course, I don't read Spanish. I don't understand Spanish. But it's good to know that that part of our community was also being serviced, always would have something to find in the paper that would be of interest to them. And the same is true in not just in language groups, but as I said, I had the occasion to write a bit about the Jewish Floor Hockey League at one point. There were the bowling scores, there were all sorts of things that, there was always something that you could find that would meet your interest somewhere in the newspaper.
I just want to add something, Michael. We also had recipe columns by Ruby Perlmutt, who always left out one ingredient. So, Marcia here? Okay, isn't that true? That she always left out one ingredient? I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but people would say, where's the salt? And they would call the editor, who was my brother for the longest time, and say, there's something missing for that recipe. And he would swear. So, there was also, I forgot the recipes, which are a mainstay of the paper, until I graduated, but they're not in there anymore, and no one has called to say we missed the recipes. That's also an indication of the changing times. We missed the recipes.
And I also wanted to say that I think that in that regard, Bernie's continued the tradition that we often mentioned your brother Matt, who was really kind of a pioneer in opening up the paper to all sorts of different ideas.
Anyone else? Ari.
Greetings everyone, welcome, and I'm very glad to see everyone here. Pertinent to...
Who are you?
Ari Gornstein. I went without saying. Thank you. Soprano Lebracha, Noah Whitman, Goldie Foman. He hired Jerome and myself many years ago to set up the Israelite Press somewhere near Matheson and Maine. And we were paid, I think, about 75 cents an hour. To clean the machines, try to put them together. They weighed more than us collectively, but somehow we managed to get them together. And then the other thing I want to recall is the Yiddish program that Noah Whitman had. As some of us would be selected from Talmud Torah to say poems, both in Hebrew, English, Yiddish, during the Holocaust Memorial. And we had to memorize these poems, and I was thinking to myself years later, why did I have to memorize a poem? I struggled year after year.
Can you recite one now for us?
No. This is about as much of a recitation as I can give. So once again, I'm really happy to be here and to see everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you.
I'm Barbara Moser. I grew up in Edmonton, but my family is all from Winnipeg. And I want to thank you for your tribute to Melvin Frenson, who's like my uncle, was like my uncle to me, very influential in my life. My father, Leo Moser, and Mel were first cousins, so thank you. He was a great man. Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for coming here. If you don't know, Barbara's connections are all with Winnipeg. She's now our neighbor in Montreal, or it was until we moved a little bit outside. And Barbara, 31 years ago, founded a newspaper in Montreal called the Senior Times in English, fulfilling a need that nobody else quite understood existed. And that newspaper, free handout, is thriving to this day and just had its 30th Gala University. Thank you, Barbara.
Gail Schrock, graduated in '79, so I'm a little bit younger than a lot of folks here, but just Walensky grad, and I wanted to talk about the landmines that could happen with the Jewish Post from time to time. So Michael Lee, he wrote a column years ago, just shortly before I got married, about how people in relationships, what made them decide to get married, etc. And I was just weeks away from my wedding. And in the column, he wrote that I was living with my partner, my husband. It was in the article. At my wedding, Lane Rappaport came up and took strips out of my father. How could you let her say that? Does the whole community need to know?
My name is, if you don't know it yet, is Zev Cohen, and I've been allowed to say a few words, which are, one, my claim to fame is that I wrote an article in Bernie's newspaper not too long ago.
We paid you for it.
And I was paid for it. Miserly, but paid for it. The other thing I want to say is that after our friends appear, as I said, if people are interested to stay on, we're going to have a panel and allow everybody to be able to say whatever they want about those golden or not so golden years, and we'll be happy to hear all of it. The more provocative and salacious, the better. And right now, I'd like to move along and say that it's my pleasure, and I've been waiting eagerly for this. It's the only reason that I came to the reunion. That's to hear our friends Myron Schultz and Danny Kulak in a klezmer extravaganza.
evening at the dance, hopefully toward the beginning of the dance before people get too enthusiastic, we would like to try to organize class photos. It's not going to be very easy to do. We're going to have to rely on people that have already sought out classmates, and we'll try to make an announcement at the beginning saying, such and such a class, go over there, there'll be a couple of photos taken, and we'll try to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible, but you know us, it'll get done eventually, maybe by Tuesday. So that's going to happen at the beginning of near the beginning of the party this evening. Number 2, could you please be quiet? Could you please pay attention to what I'm saying?
Number 3.
Okay, so number 2, everyone got number 2 clearly? Very good. Number 3. Many people here have been asking us, oh, how do I get in touch with so-and-so? And they're even having trouble finding each other because, you know, it's difficult. They know someone's here. We are going to be asking at the end and after the reunion, we're going to be emailing people and saying, do you mind if we share your email address with all the other participants at the reunion? And we will not share anyone's address until we get an email back or a phone call or $2, a pigeon, whatever it is, saying, yes, I'm fine with you sharing. Once we have collected the email addresses of people that have consented to that, we will send out a full list of those people to everyone who attended here, and hopefully that'll enable you to carry on the friendship which got maybe interrupted for 50, 60 years, and the embers were relighted here. Okay, so I just wanted to say that. Welcome everyone. I can't believe we're back in Talmatora, Peretz, Ramah, but it's all here, right? Thank you.
Okay. Now comes the important part, the food. I would request table by table so that this doesn't turn into a massacre. Those sitting at the blue table here and the blue table there, please go ahead. Everybody else, remain seated. And I will see you if you try to get in there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Gray Academy of Jewish Education. It's my very, very great pleasure to introduce the head of school, Lori Binder, my good friend, who was very helpful in everything that we needed in organizing this part of the reunion. So my sincere thanks go out to her and to all of the staff at the Gray Academy, a great institution, as Donald Trump would say. Lori Binder, the floor is yours before I say something stupid.
In 1997, the Asper Jewish Community Campus, where we are sitting right now, opened its doors
and Gray Academy of Jewish Education began. And actually, I was in my second year teaching at the time, and there were actually 3 schools functioning under one roof. It was quite a scene. There were Shore Elementary, Simkin Middle School, and Joseph Linsky Collegiate. There were 3 bell schedules, 3 schedules, and eventually we, in 2004, began with one identity, Gray Academy of Jewish Education, in order to bring cohesiveness, because what we truly are is a community within a community, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that. But today we stand with 115 years of Jewish education, and you are part of that very strong history. We're proud to be the largest Jewish day school in Western Canada, and one of the only schools, or the only school in North America, that has a homestay international student program that brings students without their families from Brazil, from Mexico, and the United States of America to spend time here in a Jewish school. So my story connected to all of this, and I don't want to spend much time on it, but my story began in 1978. I was in nursery school, and Talmud Torah was overflowing, and I attended nursery and kindergarten in the basement of the Rosh Pina. I can still remember the full eclipse back in that time. But I am a proud graduate of Talmud Torah and Joseph Linsky Collegiate's class of 91. I went on to Israel for a little bit and came back to Winnipeg, did my education degree, and had the opportunity and privilege to teach on Matheson Avenue, where I went to school for 1 year before the move here. Over the last 21 years, outside of teaching, I began in administration many years ago, and now stand in my beginning my third year as head of school.
My name is Evelyn Hecht. I was Evelyn Mallion. I'm older than all of you.
Not me.
Who said not me? Who said not me?
Maybe you are.
If you're prepared to tell me how old you are, I'm prepared to tell you.
Just you look so young.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Women do tend to look younger than men.
That was a good comment.
That's because the women age us.
That's not true, Amy. Actually,
Yes, they
Bert
do.
suggests that's
They don't have to
because...
get married to women.
No, Bert suggested that it's because women age their men.
That's a good idea.
Like fine wine.
Like fine wine. Okay. I was a parrot school graduate.
Somebody at least.
No, you don't hold it against me.
Don't hold it against anyone.
Anything. Right.
I can't serve them.
And all my kids went to Joseph Linsky, so does that make me sort of an honorary Joseph Linsky member? Okay. We're good. Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're ready to go. We have an extensive itinerary and not much script, so we'll be ad-libbing our way through it. How many of you are living out of town now? Great. Oh, good. I love playing to that kind of an audience because you forget everything about Winnipeg. And you will correct me if I'm not sure. Okay. The good thing about this tour is that you were all originally from Winnipeg, right? Yeah. So welcome back to those of you who have left. Bruchim habayim, bienvenue, and shalom aleichem.
Aleichem shalom.
Aleichem shalom.
No, that's a different school.
They need around to have
This is it here. Yeah, I'm just pulling up to the other bus.
There's a sukkah. If you haven't been in a sukkah yet this holiday, there's an opportunity. Opened shortly after Winnipeg's devastating 1950 flood. Those of us who were around at that time remember sandbagging.
Me too. I was a baby.
Oh, you were all too young. Okay.
We were most of us born.
The building has not changed profoundly since that time, but it is the third incarnation of the Sharazet. It was founded in 1889. While not the first Jewish congregation in Winnipeg, it does hold title to having the first real synagogue building. You must have put that in. I don't remember that. Really? What does that mean? The first real synagogue building.
Well, they had little stibbs.
Oh, there wasn't a shtibel. Yes, there were lots of shtibels in the North End, and in Point Douglas, where the immigrants first settled. lots of little shtiblach, and lots of synagogues that were specific to your trade, because there was a Melchiker synagogue.
Here we are.
Okay, we're passing the Share Zedek. We are not stopping. The building hasn't changed much on the exterior at all. It stands proudly. No, they're not our buses. It stands very proudly on this ground. You should know that when the Balabatim, ladies, gentlemen, when the Balabatim decided to build here, it was a very bold move, because this was not a welcoming neighborhood in the 1950s. They came here, they were working on the railroad. And they worked on the railroad for very little money, but they worked, at least they were fed, and many of them were religious to the point where they would pay their fellow non-Jewish workers to work for them on Shabbat, because they didn't want to work on Saturday. The Ashkenazi synagogue is the oldest, Miriam? Oldest operating synagogue is the Ashkenazi. It's okay. It has been here since 1928. Women sat upstairs where the pizza was. They sat in a balcony overlooking the main sanctuary, where their presence would not create a distraction and draw the men away from their prayers and meditations.
And our mothers used to come to shul and leave us in a carriage outside.
Upstairs. This is the Sharon home, the original Sharon home. Okay, Sharon home, former site of the Jewish home for the elderly. It probably housed many of our parents and our grandparents over the years. It was built in 1940. Before that, they were housed in a 40-room apartment building on Manitoba Avenue. God only knows what kind of conditions these people had to endure as they neared the end of their life. In contrast to the Parrot School, the philosophy philosophy was Orthodox with major emphasis on Tanakh, Tefillah, and the Hebrew language. In 1983, it merged with Parrott School and introduced a Yiddish track in the curriculum. It wasn't until 1959 that the high school wing, Joseph Walensky Collegiate, was established. Until then, a satellite...
Yeah, this is the building here.
A satellite education program called Maimonides College.
That's what I want.
When I drove by my house, I could see
Okay, now we've got to attach some significance to his picture. So, people who were expelled, suspended,
Okay, one more time.
Attended and survived. I attended until I was
Erwin? Small. Oh! The back. All the trophies. Okay, sorry, the back.
How about you get under the side? That's interesting. They haven't changed it. Because that way we can show who was here.
Everybody, you see this? It says Mistrad.
Yeah. Probably the only evangelical school that has Mistrad for the office. Well, maybe they study Hebrew. Church service is conducted in Hebrew.
Who's a brilliant guy? You're behind me. What the 91 2003.
Joe never.
This is the auditorium. It was also the gym. It was used by the elementary school that was behind me, and it was used by the high school that is that way. It was also used when we had gatherings, when we had teas. If people had bar mitzvahs here, they were in the synagogue and the meal was here. Just to add, I was married in here. So I was married in the synagogue and the dinner was here. Jerome's bar mitzvah was here. Yes, right. I taught here until they closed it, and in this school we housed grade 1 to 6 on this side and 7 to 12 on that side. The enrollment was always very consistent, and the enrollment was always a happy place to be. With the enrollment that we had, it was always a happy place to be. I think it's very interesting to mention that we took a picture that in the high school, next to the sign that says office, they've used the sign we left which says office, and in Hebrew underneath it says Misrad. So in the Faith Academy, there is still a little bit of Hebrew.
Well, different parts of this building are where I got my entire education, except for grade 12 when I decided to try 1 year of public school, just so that when somebody was filming me way in the future, I would be able to say, yeah, I went to public school, and now it's come. I started in nursery school on that side, which was opened in 1959 by Eileen's father, who cut the ribbon. Oh, no, sorry, that was the opening of the high school. In 1952, I started on that side, and here, the Rabbi Kravitz Auditorium is where the building ended at that time. Then in 1959, grades 7 to 11 at that time were added on, and that was the first Hebrew day school experience in Winnipeg. And so, of course, I carried on, graduated from grade 11 in 1964, and spent my 1 year at St. John's High, which was very important to me, but never equaled the kind of marvel of being able to accomplish the regular curriculum in half a day that everyone else was doing in a full day. We never thought anything of it. I guess we just thought that they could teach us a lot more if they wanted to, but they just left a lot of time for babysitting and fooling around. we had fashion shows here. Jerome Foreman and I, Jerome is here, we were the escorts, and lovely ladies who are part of the reunion today were marching down the aisle showing off some of the finest clothes of the time. A lot of good memories here and a lot of other kinds of memories, but what I remember are the people, the friends, the teachers that made our lives richer and which we'll never forget.
So, we're in the gym. We didn't call it the gym, we called it the auditorium at the time, and it's where we used to line up at lunchtime, and Mr. Butler, who was the very colorful janitor, would sell us our caramel bars and our orange crush and give us credit for weeks at a time. This was also where we had phys ed, although the school wasn't really that big on phys ed, and I didn't like it much because I was skipped a grade. So all the kids were a lot bigger than I was, so I always felt a bit kind of disadvantaged in phys ed. And I also remember every year on November 11th, for Remembrance Day, we'd all have an assembly in here, and on the stage would be the big Union Jack and the Red Ensign, and some army officer would come and give us a talk about loyalty to the British Commonwealth, and we'd all sing Land of Hope and Glory and The Maple Leaf Forever, just to show what loyal citizens Jews were to Canada and to the British Empire. So that's one of my most vivid memories of this auditorium, and it's really strange to be back. It seemed enormous at the time, and today, of course, it's a small gym by any standards, but very, very evocative to be here.
When I first attended as a child, and I came here in grade 1, and I left after grade 8, but as I stand here in what once was the gym, I do recall that it was renamed the Rabbi Kravitz Auditorium following the death of the late Rabbi Abraham Kravitz, who was the principal here and who was a very close personal family friend. He passed away in 1962, I believe. In fact, he was on his way to Florida to stay with my father when he had a massive heart attack in Minneapolis. It was a terrible shock to our family. It was a terrible shock to the Jewish community and to this school in particular. Thinking of an anecdote, when I was in grade 6, which opened in 1959, 1960, I do remember being sent out of the classroom for most likely talking. I was very good at that when the teacher was talking and I wasn't listening, and I got bored. And I had a notebook which I ripped up and proceeded to make small paper boats. I floated them in the sinks and in the toilets of both bathrooms, and I think I was sent home, and I'm not going to comment on the consequences that I received once I got there. One of my favorite memories.
What do you think it is? Yes. It's right in the theater No. Junior, yeah.
Trivia. The original Rosh Pina was at the corner of Henry and Martha. It was built in 1893. The Rosh Pina established an afternoon school and a Sunday school as soon as it opened. Its new building in 1952. This building was built in 1952.
1952 was a good year. Yay!
I was a nursery school there.
It offered nursery and kindergarten programs. Over its several years of operation, it maintained a steady enrollment of about 200 students.
Yep.
It attempted a day school program starting with a single grade 1 class in 1962. And then they introduced a grade 2 class. I don't know how long this continued, but the day school program did not succeed.
It went through 4th grade.
4th grade,
1966.
until 1966.
It started with kindergarten and
Yeah, and eventually the after-school and preschool program were dropped. Although it should be noted that for a while Talmud Torah utilized space here before 1912, Jewish orphans were raised in non-Jewish foster homes. However, in 1913, the first orphanage near Dufferin was eventually opened.
And welcome to the final event of the Winnipeg Jewish Schools Reunion 2017. I'm not going to say a lot, just a little bit about the program, a couple of words from me and perhaps my fellow organizers, anyone interested. After that, I would like to open the floor to allow people who haven't had a chance yet, in effect, to say a few words, to express themselves, to vent their anger, throw rotten tomatoes, anything. There's a microphone right in the middle of the hall, so when we begin that, anyone who wants to...
No, I want to say something.
You will.
Well, you invited and then you do the interview.
The microphone is over there, so please feel free. So just a couple of words. This momentous weekend began as an afterthought, more or less, about in July 2016, when a couple of people were exchanging Facebook posts and emails, and I had nothing better to do, so I said, why don't we have a reunion? And we're all adults here, so my dear friend Avram Rosner said, that's where the fuck up started. I'll speak just shortly. I want to thank, first of all, my fellow organizers, Eileen, Avram, Bert, Elaine. You all did a tremendous job. It couldn't have happened without you. Terribly excited, emotional, and whatever. I'm flabbergasted by the way it turned out, above and beyond my own expectations. And for that I want to thank all of you, and also the people who couldn't come this morning, but without you, it would have been Avram and me staring at each other, shouting about politics, and that would have been the end of it. Okay, the lucky winner, come up on stage. Did you check his number?
I did.
And he actually has the right number?
Yes.
It's Jaime Fox. Check again. Okay. Okay. Mr. Fox, with the compliments of the organizers.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. If you have anything to say to the audience, this is your last chance.
You know, this has been a great weekend. Initially, I wasn't sure if I was going to come, but I was talking to it, and I wasn't really talking to it. But it was great. Had a ball seeing people that I didn't really see for, I don't know, 50 years, something like that. That's a long time. Anyway, it was really fun. Hopefully, when Zabe does this again in a couple of years, we'll do it all over again.
235150. Okay. 235150, we have a winner.
Give me the option between door A and door B.
You've won the privilege of paying for the video. Apart from that, compliments. Thank you. And now, drum roll, the big prize. Ooh, okay. Everybody ready? Everybody ready? 235050. Nobody? Ready? 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 4. Yes. Sheldon Pinks, you're paying for the whole shebang. 2, 3, 5, 1, 4, 5. Okay.
Elsa, did you win? I did. Oh, fantastic.
Sir, may I see your stuff?
I'm Hannah Tao. I'm related to two of the organizers, Zabi and Afroni. And I just want to, I think on behalf of everyone here, thank them. I understand they were on the phone every day for 8 months with the planning, in addition to thanking Eileen and Bert who did the work on the ground here. But, you know, we all know this exceeded everyone's expectations, and we should give them a great round of applause and appreciation.
Can I be heard?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
I'm returning from the Parrot School, and a few things. First of all, thank you again. I mean, it's just been wonderful. A couple of thoughts. One was that the bus tour took me to the Talmud-Torah yesterday. It was the first time I had ever been in the Talmud-Torah in my life, other than the shul, once or twice. And that struck me as the kind of the isolation or the insulation that we had, that the schools didn't have a lot to do with each other. I remember we played the Talmud-Torah baseball team once, and that was about it. Yeah, we lost. We won. Oh, okay. And it struck me also that we also shared an isolation when we went into the public school system. That was common to us all, that it was a Christian kind of system that we went into. I remember debates about whether we sing Christmas carols or whether we say the Lord's Prayer and things of that sort. I mean, just thoughts about the differences that we all have. That's one thing. Second thing, I didn't realize that Miss Whiteside had taught after she retired at the Talmud-Torah. And who remembers her? Anyone? I want to tell you a story about her. She was my teacher at St. John's High School. I saw her 25 years later at a play, and I said, Miss Whiteside, you haven't changed a lot. And she said, I must have looked awful. And the third thing I want to say is that a lot of people here have a Yiddish background, whether they went to the Parrot School or not. And you heard from Lori Binder yesterday I heard from her, there are at least 50 children at the Gray Academy taking Yiddish in grades 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. It's a voluntary course. And there is Yiddish cultural courses at the University of Winnipeg, and also Yiddish available as advanced Yiddish at the University of Winnipeg from a scholar brought in by the I.L. Parrots Endowment Trust. At the University of Manitoba, but also you can cross it through the University of Winnipeg. The I.L. Parrots Endowment Trust, of which I am unfortunately the chair now, is composed of the income from the sale of the Jefferson School that's been deposited with the Jewish Foundation. We're always looking for people, A, to get involved in the trust to help foster Yiddish. We use the income to foster Yiddish in Winnipeg. We help Mama Lushan, we help the Chai dancers, we fund some of the education stuff, and we're also always open to money, too, if anyone is interested in furthering Yiddish. The one thing that we got at the Parrot School was Yiddish culture and literature, and it's one of the greatest literatures that has ever been created, the 100 years of the golden Yiddish literature, and I just want to put in a plug for that and to thank all the organizers and just to give that thought. Thank you.
Thank you. My friends and I were here for 5 years, 4 years at Talmud-Torah. I was the second graduating year of Joseph Walensky Collegiate. Then my husband and I came back to study at the University of Manitoba, Durant. When we got this message, there was absolutely no question of whether we would come. And even though only 3 of my classmates are here, this is the warmth. And this is the tribute to this community, the Jerusalem of Canada, and one of the exemplary Jewish communities in the whole world. You are the ones here. Now, I have both sweet and sour thoughts about Jewish demography. But before that, let me tell you why we came back. Doron and I, we never took up Canadian citizenship, being proud Israelis, blah, blah, blah. But we came to the University of Manitoba. First reason was, we figured it was so cold outside, we would have to study, and it turned out okay. Second reason is, we could get free Friday night meals from all your parents, many of your parents here. Shalom and thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Barbara Moser. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I grew up in Edmonton, and I went to Edmonton Torah, so I don't have the same connections as you do, but maybe different ones, because I may take the prize for having the most cousins in this room. I had 4 grandparents living here, and I was here every winter holiday and every summer holiday, and attended Camp Mossad, and went to Winnipeg Beach, and I was at University College doing English and philosophy with the other hippies in 69 and 70. And I just want to say, for me, this was a real homecoming and a very wonderful, emotional experience. And I rekindled old relationships, but I also met people that I'll never forget, like Erwin, and I can't remember his last name. Yes. He told me, I have to repeat the story that Erwin told me last night, that my father, Leo Moser, who was quite a famous mathematician, Canadian mathematician, who died in 1970 when I was 20 and living here and going to university. Erwin played my father was chess champion of Alberta at one point, and Erwin, when he was 14, played my father at the Winnipeg Chess Club and beat him, Winnipeg Jewish Chess Club, and beat him 8 times. And after the first or second time, my dad said, he's good. And after the second, the third or fourth, he said, he's very good. And after the 5th or 6th, he said, he's dynamite. And after the 8th, he said, he's strictly dynamite.
Hello all, my name is Moshe Goldenberg. I was around for all of this. I have one poem, I have one story in honor of Laurie Cherniak in terms of the Yiddish aspect, and it's about a little lady who's walking down Main Street, and she's really, really troubled. She's looking for help. So she walks up to every person she sees and she says, "That's Yiddish." Sorry, another one. "That's Yiddish." No, I don't know what you're talking about. Finally, she walks up to one guy and he says, "Ja, ich redt a bissl. Was willst du?" And of course the lady says, "Gut. What time is it?" And the second story is about the North End and Smatha district. My Auntie Sadie, who some of you might remember, I just use her name, she didn't really do this, is walking down Notre Dame, and there's a guy who's approaching her. And she sees that the guy is wearing a raincoat. And then she notices that there's no pants under the raincoat. Sure enough, the guy walks right up to her, opens up the raincoat, and he's completely naked, of course. So my Auntie Sadie is quite disgusted by this. She looks at the guy really angry and she says, "You call that a lining?"
seen everybody else, I know that I have to do it exactly like this. So I'm Cyril Keston. I went to Tomatora and Joseph Wolinski from grade 1 to grade 9, much to Rabbi Kravitz's chagrin. Every year he said to my mother, "Why doesn't he try a public school?" And my mother cried and said, is that a way to treat a nice Jewish boy? And he said, "He's stupid." But I wouldn't go as long as there was phys ed in the public schools, because damned if I was going to get changed with the Goyish boys looking at me with their long hair. They were scary. But so I did last for a little while at the Tomatora at Joseph Wolinski, and then I escaped. But what I came out here for was just a little bit of recognition of my life, and that is that clearly my mother did not love me as much as Avram Rosner's mother. I think there are at least 2 pictures of me somewhere in this world. One, you got it. And that one is with me to learn her, right? Eat your hearts out. The other is a confession. When Avram put up that picture, when?
January 2015 original.
Right, 2 years ago. There was actually a picture of me in it, and he labeled it. I think my name was in it, so it came to my attention. And I loved it, because, as I just told you, there are no pictures of me anywhere. And we started trying to name everybody, and when I realized that I couldn't name, I recognized all the faces, but I couldn't name everybody, I referred Avram to Eileen Curtis Margulis, who knows everybody, everything. She wrote every name on there, and suddenly, and this is where the confession is, my Facebook feed got so overwhelmed with this stuff, because of all of you and many others. I wrote to Avram and I said, "I've had enough of this, I can't stand going through all of this stuff. We're setting up another page." And so we set up that, not their union page, the 50s and 60s Jewish schools. And as with everything Jewish, we debated the name. For a little while. First it was Tomatora, then it was Tomatora and other schools, and then we went through a lot of them until we came to something. When Zev showed up and said, "Let's have a reunion," I always thought of Andy, what was his name? Nicky Rooney. Let's have a show in the backyard. I thought, that's one thing that I'm not going to get involved with. So we maintained the page, but those 4 people, Avram and Zev and Eileen and Bert, took it over, and it's a Jewish thing, so nobody's going to be happy, but I'm thrilled. I think these folks did a fabulous job, and I think they did a lot of If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here, and if it wasn't, of course, for us coming here and enjoying this, this has been a highlight of the last 10 years of my life at least, because my kids were born, and I can't always supersede that. This is fabulous. I'm glad everybody came, I'm glad I came, and once again, thank you to all these folks, it's great.
Raphael Lachter, Alderman, talking about who was children of Holocaust survivors and who weren't. When my brother Cease and I were growing up, I know Cease, we should talk about it sometime, and others. We, of course, my parents came here 3 months before I was born. They were the only survivors of their families. And we, you know, kids are kids, but there was sort of a disconnect between us and the people who were Canadians. And we felt it for many, many years. It didn't prevent us from relating to everyone else, whether in the Jewish school system or not, but it was there. And I don't know, somebody should write about these. They probably have, I just haven't seen the book. Secondly, only now am I starting to wonder, we grew up speaking Yiddish, of course. Our parents learned English pretty quickly. They had no choice. You had to live, you had to make a living. But I always found it ironic that in order to learn English, I had to go to Hebrew school. And that's where I learned English. Apparently I spoke with an accent, as Mrs. Feldman told our mother decades later when she bumped into her at Eaton's or something like that, and she asked whether a Vroomy still speaks with an accent. I listened to Laurie Cherniak talking about the divides. And there were many divides. They were political, they were social, they were linguistic, everything, secular, religious, Zionist, non-Zionist, you name it. And just random memory, 1963 was the first year of Reach for the Top in Winnipeg. And so Norman Stein absolutely decided that Joseph Wolinski Collegiate had to be in Reach for the Top. So he kicked two of us into shape, me and Larry Epstein, and we were going to be on Reach for the Top. Good. Why two? Why not four? Because it's a four-person team. Because there were more schools than opportunities in that first year, so schools had to team up. So we teamed up with St. Paul's. Yeah. And it was great. We made very good friends. We were invited to St. Paul's graduation. So you had the Jews and the Catholics, and there is a lot of similarity. We don't have a pope because we can't agree on who should be the pope. But then, guilt. There's guilt. The guilt is shared. And then 2 years later, I spent my only year ever in public school. I graduated grade 11 in '64 from Joseph Wolinski, and the next year there actually was a grade 12 for the first time. A semblance of a grade 12, but you actually had grade 12 graduates. Jerome Foreman graduated. He had to leave, I think. Who else was in that class? Anyway, you know who you are. But I decided I could not live my life without being able to say I spent at least 1 year in the real world. So I went to St. John's in grade 12. And then, so this was '64, and they were pulling together their Reach for the Top team. So I thought, yeah, we didn't do badly last time with the Catholics. Let's see how we do in a public school environment. So I thought I'd try out. There were many Jews at St. John's. Many, many, many. There were classes full of Jews, because if you look at the yearbooks, you see they actually segregated. They had boys' classes, girls' classes, Jews, Ukrainians. I don't know how they managed. They did a very skillful job. I even think they did DNA testing. So I was ready to go for it was fall, I was ready to go for the Reach for the Top trials, just for fun. Of course, they held them on Yom Kippur. We're talking about St. Jude's High. We're not talking about just any old school here, right? Anyway, so that was that. So the divides were always there, but I'm going to finish now by saying this. Cyril explained the genesis of this insanity. It was this guy, and let no one tell you any different, that pitched the idea and started organizing it before anyone agreed with him, and had it all mapped out in a very, very democratic fashion before the committee even existed. And then Eileen and Bert, who did all the heavy lifting, because they stayed in Winnipeg, gave ace, and the rest of us did what we could. But I want to say this, I came here with ideas of nostalgia, remembering old stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, but that's not what this experience turned out to be for me at all. What it turned out to be for me, I think, and I'll think about it later too, was meeting all these people. I know a significant majority of the people in this room, which is a bit scary, and being far more interested and fascinated and curious about what they are now than some stupid stories about when we were kids. I don't mean stupid in a bad way, but those things happen, but that's not what it turns out after this weekend ties me to many of the people in this room, and I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that you all came, and I'm sure, based on this experience, we can expect to see you next year and the following annual meeting. Thank you very much.
The sense of community, truly, that we heard about when we went to Asper Center certainly is here. How people embraced other people, how the people that you had misgivings about, that were adults, that we all came from the same place, and we all love each other equally. Thank you very much for affirming in many ways who I am as an adult and allowing that childhood insecurity and trepidation to vanish. Thank you for your...
I'm Rocky Pollock. In about 1951-52, my parents bought a lot on Brock Street and built 623. house 4 houses from the corner, right across the street from the Herzliya. And I ended up growing up at the Herzliya, to the extent that I'm grown up. And I have to say that my takeaway from this weekend is this, that our parents were pretty smart. They figured out that if they do drag us kicking and screaming to favor, and I went to an after-school program at Herzliya, but stuck it out right through to what became Maimonides College in the old Ramah building. When they did that, they planted seeds that resulted in, well, my knowing from just being a South End night school guy, half the people, maybe more, in this room, because we got into other activities like the Y and AZA and so on. And all of a sudden, if you look around the room, fast forward, like nobody really wants to do that. Just to about 20, 30 years ago, you see people in this room starting to get involved in the boards of directors of Jewish Child and Family Service, of the Board of Jewish Education, and so on. And most of us are kind of retired from that stuff now, but look at us. You know, I mean, our parents really deserve the credit. That's my takeaway from this weekend, that I should really be grateful today to their decision to make sure that, not that they built a house across the street from the Herzliya, they weren't so thrilled with the construction, but that they made me adhere to something that I guess I'm still adhering to. And God bless them.
Hey, I'm Debbie Remus. I live in Edmonton, and it's good to hear that other people had trepidation in coming, because I was the same. I thought, you know, why would I want to come? Because I live south. Most of you lived north growing up. I went to Jewish night school, and so I thought, like, why would I come? But Facebook, that page, I want to thank the organizer. They did a fabulous job with Facebook, with emails. They made me feel welcome to come, and that's why I came. Jewish day school, I didn't go, but when it came to my kids, I hated Jewish night school. It was horrible. You got to school during the day, cabs picked you up, and you went to school at night 3 times a week. My God, was it horrible. So,
Class action against me.
it was, you know, your little
We're
kid.
Jews, we're supposed to suffer.
The one thing I learned is only the girls in the South End had bat mitzvahs. Yeah, and that was my commitment. I had to finish my Jewish education in order to have my bat mitzvah. And after that, that was the end of my Jewish education. But wherever I go in the world and I meet people, the connection is there. I know more Winnipeggers now than I did before I left, because wherever I go, and my husband would refuse to come. Well, I didn't even invite him. He's from Toronto, and he did not want to come. He's tired of Winnipeg talk, but it has a special meaning. Anyway, I want to say thank you to everybody. It's been a wonderful weekend, and I'm glad I came.
One of my biggest thrills is meeting so many of you who came from all over the world, and renewing the friendships with those of you whom I knew from the past. I know that what I enjoyed in working on this reunion, and yes, it was a lot of work, I can't deny that, but without you guys, it would have all come to naught. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to make special mention of one group, because to me it's most amazing. Believe it or not, there are 5 of us here who went to nursery and kindergarten together.
Wow.
And that, we could all be together really meant a lot to me. So thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of the time here.
I'm Venus Gordon. I came here because it was a reunion, and I graduated from the second day class, day school grade, and we had up to grade 8. And we also did the sharing between parent school and Talmud Torah for English, because we were 8 people, 2 men, 6 women, And parent school had a little more, and we were all together on Colson there. We walked from Matheson. But what I wanted to tell you...
Oh, you have to talk, so I didn't
The microphone up there. Okay, speak closer. The thrill for me this weekend was yes coming. No one else came from my class or Rashi's class. Rashi was in the first class. But the thrill for me was to see all my old students. I taught for 37 years in Walensky. How many people in this room were in my classes? Last night there was a whole bunch of other people there that were also from the class that I saw. To me, the thrill was to see what they grew up to be and what they're doing in their lives, etc., etc. And obviously, the Jewish community of Winnipeg has made its mark all over the place. I got an email last night at 11:30 at night from Tina Duskis. Tina is Rabbi Schachter's daughter. And she said to me, Avita, how did it go? Tell me all about it. I'm going to get the pictures, but who did you see and what did they do? And give them all my love. So that's why I wanted you to know that she did notice in Israel what's going on here and wanted to make sure that you knew she was thinking of you all. So, again, thank you to the organizers, to whoever was responsible, not just the big organizers, but there were little organizers too. And those people deserve to be thanked as well. So, I hope you had as much fun as I did, and I hope Nitch Hashem will do it again.
I'm Sam Cates, better known as Big Sam Cates, the younger guy. Yeah, big. I graduated from Parrott Shul, I think in 1965. I'm going to start with a bit of a downer. I'm really upset by the fact that there's only 250 people here. How many students graduated from the Hebrew school system in Winnipeg over the years? It's got to be in the hundreds of thousands. And for only 250 to show up, it's quite disturbing. On the other hand, it's my personal belief that there's only one degree of separation between all Jews in the world. And the fact that we've all come together and some of us started as strangers, but we're leaving as mishpucha today, I think it's fantastic. And I really want to thank the organizers and all the volunteers for all of their effort put in making this a reality. I think you guys and girls are just fantastic people, and I am so proud to say that we're mishpucha. Thank you.
This is, can you hear it? Yes. Yeah, the past ain't what it used to be. I think in hearing everyone, Bernie Bellin, if you didn't know. And I think we also are remiss in not paying tribute to the people who built the schools that we were all fortunate to attend. I know of at least two people here whose parents were instrumental. Laurie Cherniak, whose father Saul and his grandfather Alter were absolutely vital in building the Parrott Shul. And Saul, I'm glad to say, is still alive. Laurie, he's 101? 100. Yeah, amazing.
The oldest living graduate of Parrott School.
Oldest living graduate of Parrott School. Right, he's actually in my mother's class at Parrott School. And Eileen Margulis, her father was instrumental in building the Talmud Torah, and Joseph Walensky, if I'm not mistaken about that. There are others too, Joseph Walensky himself. This is, I didn't expect to start. I don't want to do a long list of names because you leave out, but it's been my pleasure to have known some of them as a youngster. I think most of us may have remembered Rabbi Kravitz, who departed us too early. Rabbi Fredman, for those of you who know him, is still alive. Unfortunately, he's ailing with Parkinson's. His wife, Micheline, had contacted me to say she wished she could have been here. A lot of us knew the Frymans, who would have come, except it would have meant coming on Shabbos. But aside from teachers and principals, there were so many other people. And I think when we were doing the tour yesterday, and if you went by the various schools and synagogues, there was a period in Winnipeg that had tremendous growth in the early 50s. And we owe so much to the people who gave, not just financially, but of their time. Now it goes on to a certain extent. Fundraising is obviously still a major part of Jewish life in almost every city, but it doesn't have the same heartfelt connotation to it, I would say. And I think, as it was noted, our parents, having sent us to either day school or evening school or Sunday school, I don't know if they had tremendous foresight. It was something that was taken for granted. And when some of us were talking about our kids and their loss of not having that, it does shed a great deal of light about how lucky we were. And the fact that this reunion grew at sort of at the very last minute. As I recall, the last I heard in August was 140. By now it's over 220, is that correct? And I've talked to a lot of people who weren't here and are remiss. Some couldn't come, and some are kicking themselves, and they're going to kick themselves even further. So I hope that it doesn't fall on the same planners. There are other people who could take on the torch that you're passing. And again, we owe so much to the people who organized this. We don't, not to repeat, but these kinds of reunions are something that we'll treasure. We owe a lot of people. Some are no longer with us. Just want to make mention of some of those people who are no longer with us.
My name is Max Sugarov. I want to talk about Rabbi Kravitz and love. I went to Talmud Torah and Joseph Walensky up until grade 10. I say until grade 10 because I actually began grade 10. And I wanted to join my buddies, Jerry Hamovich and David Stewart, who went to West Kildonan, and so I wanted a taste of the other side of the world. Rabbi Kravitz, he fully understood, and what he started doing, he still wanted to give us something. So he started to meet on Sundays with all his duties. I mean, he was head rabbi of Winnipeg. He was the rabbi of the shul, the principal of the school. He took out time on his Sunday to meet in his office with Jerry and David and myself to teach us the book of Job. And I said to myself, this man is not only dedicated, he loves us. He really wants to give us something. Sadly, we had only one meeting. This was 1960. Before the next meeting, he was taken suddenly from us at the age of 48. And so I just want to pay tribute to not just the love that Rabbi Kravitz gave us, but it occurred to me that the whole community loved us children, the parents, and the parents and the teachers. And love is the main feeling that I have experienced this weekend. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Jerry Cates. I was in Talmud Torah for 9 years, and a lot of my good friends who went to the same institution. And I say that like Stony Mountain sometimes. It was quite a time. Rabbi Kravitz also played a tremendous role in my life. I was 13 years old, and I was in Mr. Brownstone's choir. I was davening Musaf on a Saturday morning. It was Lori Block's bar mitzvah. I don't know if people know Lori. The place was full. I was standing on a little chair because my nickname was Katointi. So I'm standing on the chair, and Brownstone takes his tuning fork and he goes, Efer Zisoyim. I start singing, Baruch Atah Adonai. I went flat. So he screams, a Schwarzfinster year the Harvard goes to Werden. A playoff deal to Behemoth. And he comes running up to me, hits me on the wrist with the tuning fork and lacerates me. Half-inch laceration which is bleeding copiously, and suddenly on my shoulder I feel Max Berengoid. Remember Max Berengoid? He was the Torah reader. We nicknamed him Mr. Schnapsentuchs. Of course. And he says, Jelly, Jelly, don't bleed on the new parachute. Don't just blind on the parachute, okay? It's new. Don't do that, okay? I'm standing there, tears rolling down my eyes, and everybody's stunned. And Rabbi Kravitz gets up, and he shuffles all the way towards me at the bima. And as he arrives, he pulls out this old schnock rag, and I can see it's been used perhaps many times. And he comes up to me and he wraps my wrist where the bleeding was, and he says, Jerry, don't worry, you'll be okay. He kissed me on the temple, and Brownstone gave me the tune, and away I went.
I spent 13 years in Winnipeg. I thank my parents who came out of Europe, out of the Holocaust, through Israel, and then came to Winnipeg in 1950 with me, a 6-month-old, and my sister. And I say without any doubt whatsoever that those 13 years made me who I am, for better or for worse. Everything else that happened afterwards, however great, was an offshoot of that and a bonus for me. But those 13 years have been with me all the time, no matter how far apart I was from the people and from the place geographically. In the last decade, I visited Winnipeg yearly to see my sister, who still has lived in Winnipeg since 1950, and my wonderful cousins, Jaime and Freddie Rosenblatt. So we always get together here. Before saying thank you to all of you for the last time, I do want to mention 2 people that I think should be mentioned. You all know him. I want to thank Bernie Bellin from the bottom of my heart for being part of the outer circle, but an important part of preparing this. We got a lot of input from Bernie, and I thank him for it, and his commentary on the tour was enlightening. Thank you, Bernie. And I want to mention one teacher who I was very close to, and I remember till this day, he's still with us, but unfortunately could not attend, David Gamliel, who was a teacher of quite a few of us at the JWC. He stands out because he was the first Yemenite that I ever saw in my life. And since I've seen many, but he was #1, and he remains #1. And on a somewhat somber note, I do want to say, though, that in the last few years, I've been pained and saddened by the fact, I live in Israel. I've lived in Israel for many, many years. All of my teenage years, my adult life, education, military service, you name it, working life. And what I've seen in the last few years, very unfortunately, is a growing, deepening divide between the Jews in Israel and the Jews that I hold so dear in the diaspora, in North America and elsewhere. I don't want to go into the politics of it, and there's no time to talk about the reasoning for that, but I see it happening all the time, and it's bad for Jews everywhere. I don't know what the solution is. I hope some smarter people than me will come up with. I know that Avram has the solution, but he will send it to you in a sealed envelope next week. I hope we can overcome that, because I think we really need to overcome that. If we don't get together and we don't get that divide out of the way, it's going to hurt all of us in the long run. So let's hope for a better future on that. Thank you all for participating in this wonderful, momentous weekend. It was far above what I expected. Originally, when Avram and I were corresponding, my idea, and then Bert and Eileen, my idea was we'd get 20 unlucky people together in a room,
some of them from our class, maybe somebody else would join in. Maybe we could get a few people off the street to join us. And we'd sit there twiddling our thumbs and arguing. There he is, that's what he's doing. So the turnout has been fabulous, and I thank each and every one of you, and wish you all the very best, lots of good health, success, and you're all part of the mishpucha, as someone said, so let's keep going as a mishpucha. Thank you very much. See you next time.